This is one of the more iconic motorcycles Honda ever produced. It's a V4 800cc dual overhead cam, fuel injected ABS model. This is a 6th generation of VFR 800 back in the day. Derived from race technology, from what's called the RC 45, which was a fully on track bike back in the day, and single-sided swing arm, really notable for the thing. I mean, it's visually quite appealing. Of course, everybody loves a single-sided swing arm. Chain drive, of course. But the very first models of these was back in '83, and they had the VF 500, VF 750, 1000cc Interceptor. It was called a VF 1000F model, and then after about 85, 86, they went to a VFR 750. The early V4 engines were derived from the Magnas and the Sabres, the cruiser bikes. They had a 1000, 750, 500, and I think also a 400 in some parts of the world, the Magna and the Sabre, and they were plagued by issues of soft camshafts and camshaft pitting and the followers pitting, and so they had huge issues with that, and really tainted the public's perception early on of the V4 engine. It was quite revolutionary back in the day. It was the world's first V4 liquid-cooled engine placed in a mass-produced motorcycle. So it was really something else, but unfortunately they had those issues, and the VF 1000, 750, and 500 Interceptors also had cam chain issues, so premature cam chain wear and rattly cam chains, and they were really hard to work on, complicated, especially by the standards of the day. And so they had an unfortunate reputation, and so Honda felt compelled to do something about it. And in 86, he came out with the VFR 750, which was quite an overbuilt machine. And notably, they had gear-driven cams and got rid of the camshafts, the cam chain issues that plagued the earlier models, and upgraded the radiators and a number of other improvements, which made it quite a solid bike. And that VFR 750 ran right up to 97 until they changed it to an 800. But in those years between 86 and 97, the VFR 750 was a really rock-solid motorcycle. Good handling. They've done everything quite well on it to make up for lost time on the introduction of that early V4, which was plagued with problems for sure. This one's got a cam chain tensioner, 6th generation VFR 800, and it's got cam chain issues. It rattles a little bit once in a while. So prior to this, the Generation 5 didn't have that. They had gear-driven cams. The VTEC motors on these things, the VTEC was a variable cam timing. Honda's designation for VTEC, it was an acronym for basically the gist of it was variable cam timing. So they could shut off the 2 valves on a cylinder out of 4. There's 4 valves per pot, and they could shut off 2 at a time at low RPMs and then turn it on later on. And it was oil actuated or electronically actuated. They're very susceptible to oil changes. So if you use the wrong filter, or you use the wrong grade oil, or you don't change oil, or the deposits build up, then they can rear their ugly head. The old Goldwing 1500 with about 60,000 miles on it. Not many miles. Look at the valve cover here. A lot of deposits in there. That's from lack oil changes. It's carbon blowing through the rings. Variable cam timing, and this one has hydraulic valve lifters. All that gunk builds up equally throughout the engine. Same with cam chain tensioners. They were really fallible on these things. Lots of people had problems with cam chain tensioners. The other thing with the electrical system on these particular 6th generation bikes is that they had weak regular rectifiers, and they would just start melting the connectors, and then it would cause a chain reaction, eat the stator, eat the regular rectifier. And it was usually brought on and instigated by people running a crap battery. They just wouldn't want to buy a battery, so they boost it and keep riding it, and then yeah, it would charge and start. You'd get, not too many cranks out of it initially, but a crappy battery would, limp you along for another month. But the problem is the stator it doesn't have much capacity for charging on these bikes. It's very marginal. So if you have a battery that it's always working to charge, like a dead battery, then it's putting a lot of stress on the components, and what would happen is the regular rectifier would overheat, trying to shunt off the excess electricity, and the wires would melt and the connectors would melt, and then it was just the beginning of the end, and it would lead to a big expensive repair job, because stator's expensive, regular rectifier expensive, then you'd still have to buy another battery, and and rip all the plastic off to get at everything too, because the regular rectifier's back here under the tail and the stator's down on the engine here, so all the plastic has to come off and get at the wiring so you can snip. And the solution is to solder all the wires together and upgrade the regular rectifier to what's called a MOSFET regular rectifier off of a later motorcycle like a ZX10R, I believe, or maybe an FJR 1300. Even in the ATV world, they had nice MOSFET regular rectifiers on YFM 700 and 660 Yamaha Grizzlies. And you need the plug too that goes in it, because they didn't have a plug tail coming out of it, so the plug went right into the regular rectifier, so you had to snip it off the unit. So salvage yards are your best friend for that, for sure. And they're really simple. There's only a black wire, red wire, and then 3 yellows or 3 blacks, coming off the stator. And it doesn't matter where those 3 yellows or 3 blacks go, or 3 whites sometimes they are as well. So white, black, yellow. 3 of the same color coming off the stator. And it doesn't matter where they plug into, but you got to get the polarity right, obviously. So there was a black wire for the earth, and then a red wire for the live wire, the positive. So there was that. So that's the solution with these things. You'd upgrade the regular rectifier, snip off all the connectors, solder everything together, and that would work really well, actually. And as for the cam chain tensioners, you can get in there and replace those. It was the actual cam chain tensioners that wouldn't retain their position, so they'd start backing off, and then the chain would start rattling. And you can hear it, particularly after oil changes. Sometimes people will complain about it. But cam chain tensioners and the charging system, other than that, they were a pretty good bike. A 180 rear section tire and 120 17 front, and pretty common sizes, and had that beautiful single-sided swing arm. So that was really cool. Nice, really acceptable handling, really decent. You get taller windscreens for these things. You get bags, trunk, etc., etc. So they made a nice sport touring bike. Everybody immediately loved it, and it turned out that it was actually a capable sports touring bike. This is probably the one of the premier bikes that introduced sport touring designation into the market. So before then, people would just put bags on their Concords, and that was the closest thing you had to this. But it turns out this is quite a capable bike. It does everything quite well around town, or you can flog the throttle, and it does the twisties really well. And it's a fairly comfortable motorcycle and reasonably priced as well. So this motor, they still make it in, I think it's called a Cross Tour. We never got those in North America, the Cross Tour. They're more popular in Europe, but it's the same motor, more or less. It's a VFR 800cc fuel injected. They're a little thirsty on the gasoline, and that's what they're running into in Europe in the year 2025 with that other machine, the Cross Touring platform, or Cross, whatever they call it, with the V4 engine in it. And that's the biggest complaint about it, is that the gas mileage is a little lacking. I don't know exactly mile per gallon, but it's an old design, and it's a lot of bike, and it puts out a lot of output, so you don't get something for nothing. And besides, you're not buying these for grocery shopping and save money on fuel, right? So this is fuel injected, and not so long ago, before this, 99, 2000, they were carbureted, and then 2000, I believe, came out with the EFI fuel injected model. So quite a nice little motorcycle. This one's been previously enjoyed, let's say. So, a little rough around the edges, but still a nice bike. Rides nice. And VFR 800. Nice bike. Good value for your money. Highly recommend them. I really think the old ones were the better ones, the 750 with the gear-driven cams. Done fork seals and brake pads and batteries and, you know, the usual stuff. So the old 750s, in my opinion, were the better value. However, they're getting long in the tooth and the parts are getting a little hard to find. And all these different models like the RC24 and the 26 and 35, 34, whatever they were, like they had all these variations on a theme with the old 750 V4s. And they had slightly different tunings and whatnot to them. So the ECUs were different, and, you know, there was componentry in the electronics that were different, and, you know, they changed, of course, the styling and the gauges throughout the years. So they're getting a little harder to find. Most of them went to the scrap heap. They got crashed and abused and that sort of thing. But if you find a nice example, they're worth the money. They're fetching about $5,000-6,000 now. And for a nice minty example. So if you're in the market for one, keep that in mind. Worth the money, and if you spend the money, you probably get the money back for sure on a nice example of a VFR 750. Single-sided swing arm with that nice white wheels on it. They're beautiful bikes, beautiful handling. I've always enjoyed driving them. I'm not a big fan of the newer style ones. They're cool and everything, but like I said, they had those few glitchy issues, and so that always kind of turned me off. And then the people that buy them too, a lot of people that buy them, they don't do the maintenance to them because they're sort of complicated, especially if you start doing valve adjustments and this sort of thing. People just don't do the maintenance. So, you know, you really got to watch in the used market when you're buying one of these that you get something that's been loved and has paperwork associated with prior servicing done to it, and that will add value too when you go to sell it, if you ever sell it. And you never know, you might love it and keep it forever. So I hope that helps. VFR 800, VFR 750. Very cool bikes. I've had a couple of them, and yeah, they were cool bikes for sure. So that's that VFR 800. Enjoy.